My name is Tracy Sophus. I'm the IT Director at Kanawha County Ambulance. I've been here for 32 years. I've been involved in the IT department that whole time. I was administrative supervisor in addition to those duties for about 15 years. I've also been responsible for the logistics department and both our vehicle maintenance and building maintenance departments as well at different times. I graduated from National Institute of Technology. I'm married and I have 2 daughters and 1 stepson. Larry?
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Larry Cole. I'm thankful that you guys are here with us today. I'm the Director of Communications and Transport Services here at Kanawha County Ambulance. I've been here slightly less time than Tracy at 28 years. I've been a paramedic all my adult life since the age of 18. I've served in a number of capacities here at Kanawha County Ambulance through, of course, field paramedic training officers, communications supervisors, and was the director of finance here for 13 years, which is an interesting situation, and that I could have committed a capital crime and been paroled faster than I could have got out of billing. Like Tracy, I have children. I have 3 adult children. I have 1 at home still to go. He'll be at WVU in the fall of next year. Majoring in biomedical engineering with probably a minor in beer pong. But with that, we'll go ahead and go through the presentation. Just to let you guys know where we are, we're in the great state of West Virginia. We're in Charleston, which is the state capital of West Virginia. What's highlighted in red on the slide is the actual county. It's 932 square miles. It has a unique mix of very urban to very rural. Where our office is in a very urban part of the city of Charleston, and if you drive 20-25 minutes in about any direction, you are in almost wilderness. And so, of course, we maintain responses in all of those areas. Our daytime population, because it is the seat of state government, is about 250,000 persons, Monday through Friday. We, likewise, we were established in 1977. We peak at 42 ambulances, make about 73,000 responses a year. They are telling me today that we have 313 employees. This includes our part-time staff, and we do pretty much the same as everybody else in the country on services, which are, we of course do the 911 service for the entire county. We do non-emergency transfers, which is more regional, so all contiguous counties and so forth we would touch, as well as SCT for about everything in the lower half of the state. Wheelchair services, and we have meetings scheduled now with payers and so forth to start a community paramedic program just shortly. And just to give you guys some background on this, when we started this, we had several problems that were going on, and we were running separate applications such as separate billing, separate CAD, pretty much a separate EPCR, although it was pretty much a morph for the billing system. And we had a number of increasing costs and hardware maintenance replacements that Tracy will talk to us about in a bit. The other thing was that we had just a severe lack of business intelligence. And we'd spent a long time on reporting out of those packages, and we'd worked with them pretty extensively to get them to what we needed. However, you still had to go run a report. And just having people to do that, or those were time things, there were events and calendars where someone would go run reports on late calls or on all of the math that occurs in billing. And so that was just time-consuming and cumbersome for us, as well as, and Tracy will mention, the services on those servers would abruptly stop, and those were hard to manage. You would have to restart the services, most of them daily. You would have to restart. So those guys were coming in a little early just to get restarts on the services or restart on a server so that it was fresh for the rest of the day. And the driving thing was pretty much a dissatisfaction with the EPCR that we were using. And our field folks were were kind of dissatisfied with the EPCR. We'd been on it for about 4 years. It was adequate, but it just didn't meet some needs of ours. And the other thing was it didn't have an interface to the CAD system, so we didn't have an ability to push the CAD information to the EPCR to help the guys out in the field decrease their key punch and decrease their error rate on the EPCRs. And probably one of the bigger things outside of the field's discomfort with it was that these things were interfaced from one to another, billing, CAD, EPCR. And if one of those broke, Tracy and the guys back in the IT section, and we have a very small IT section, about 2.5, 3 people back there, and so those guys would end up on this big bug hunt. And what would happen was if it was 2 different vendors, you would get vendors pointing their fingers at each other that, well, so-and-so, they changed something, they upgraded something, it broke the interface. And that's where we had problems with the interface software. Mark, is there a poll there?
So I'm launching a new poll here, and the poll is open. And the question for everyone is, how often do your supervisors need to head back to the office to get a status on either their crew or their PCR status? So I'm looking at the answers as they're coming in. Interesting to see they're kind of split across the board. We're getting some really changeable numbers. It looks like 25% are saying sometimes, 13% are saying all the time, and then the other half is saying that this doesn't happen. So I'll give a few more moments for people to finish their voting and share the results here. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share the results, and those should be on the screen. So you can see here that about 25% of the time it's sometimes, and 13% it's all the time. So that's interesting.
So back to the challenges with the interface software, and we had difficulty reconciling the EPCRs to dispatches, and that's where we were losing run sheets or EPCRs, and they became unbillable. And we knew that we were losing about 1% of those calls, but they were very, very, very cumbersome for us to be able to find. And I'll go in a little more detail on that in a bit. But also our EPCR product, it was impossible to be able to send a call back to a crew or to crew members to have them make corrections, or if it was incomplete, to have them actually complete the call. So we were having to bring our crews in here to the office and fire them up on a desktop version and to get them to complete them. And that's not really palatable and comfortable for anybody, especially after these guys have worked, like, say, a night shift, and they've come off the shift at, say, 6 in the morning, and now they're waiting on somebody, to come into work at 7 to be able to help them with that. The other thing was, and we're in a pretty much a unique situation, and just in the setup of it, we have a PSAP, a 911 PSAP that dispatches all of the emergency calls for us, and then we have another communication center here in our building that does non-emergency wheelchairs, SCT calls, those types of things. So we're technically dispatched out of 2 centers, and it's it's a little bit odd in our setup, and it has more to do with it's been that way forever, and some politics that surround it. But the way and the other way that we were doing that was the other problems was it was kind of Wild West dispatching, and that was a result of being dispatched out of 2 centers because there was no visibility between each of the CADs, and so you would get both of those centers trying to pull the same truck for a call or near simultaneously, and it always caused some friction and strife with those guys. Tracy, do you want to talk about our previous business state and where we were with servers?
Sure.
Before I mess it up?
Our previous business state, we had separate CAD and billing pieces, which caused us to have some duplication. Our guys up in the dispatch center would key patient information in for a trip, and then that information wouldn't flow down to our billing department. So we had our billing department, in some cases, putting the exact same information in. We desired, of course, a system where our EPCRs, our CAD, and our billing would work together. We did, however, have a connection between our EPCR and our billing at that time. We required about 5 servers to operate. One of the big problems that we had, our software providers would not allow us to virtualize any of those servers. So they wanted CAD running on a box. They wanted EPCR running on a box. They wanted billing running on its own box. And you can see how that adds up very quickly, the number of pieces of equipment that you need. Like I said before, we had multiple databases that we had to try to manage, which increased our storage demands. If you're putting in patient information more than once, then you've got a duplication there, which is going to expand how much storage you actually need to run your business. That also creates a problem in IT because you have extra hardware pieces that you have to manage. You have extra data that needs backed up. So your data backup pieces have to be beefy to hold the number of pieces of data that you need to get backed up. So those are some of the problems that we had in our previous business state with the IT department, and we'll move on from there.
So we started down the process. We started with wanting to change the EPCR, and so we, like most places, would develop a committee with our field providers and management oversight, of course, as is with all of those large processes, those are cross-departmental. So which created a situation where the directors and managers had to be in attendance, as well as for those meetings. And those meetings lasted for several months and were occurring weekly or bi-weekly. And we also have an outside IT vendor that provides us some support, specifically with hardware acquisitions, things like switches, firewalls, so forth, things that we don't necessarily do every day. We always have those guys. One of the big things for the field was the form factor on their end. We've been on laptops for a number of years, for 4 years, I guess, since we had the original EPCR product. And with the emergence of tablet technology, we had our field staff wanting to try out tablets, for the most part just because they're lighter. And if any of you are not field providers, just run out to one of your ambulances and grab some of the equipment that they have, add a heart monitor, a drug bag, and so forth, and that stuff starts adding up quickly on weight, and that's even before you actually get to pick the patient up. So those guys were all about wanting to decrease the weight that they had to carry. As we went through again, and this was, we started pretty much related to EPCR, and so we went through demos of most of the available EPCR products that were out here. There was a couple that we didn't do because they were either in a bad legal situation at that point, or we had gotten information from other ambulance providers that were using them saying that they were thinking about leaving the market or going overseas and so forth. So there was just a couple of them that we didn't do demos with. We did exhaustive reference inquiries. We have people that attend conferences, classes, and so forth nationwide. They network, so we're pretty good here internally at knowing someone somewhere that uses a particular piece of equipment or a particular piece of software. As is with most of those things, we end up in an RFP development, and then we shortlist the demos down to 3 vendors for for the EPCR. Then, as is with most things in EMS, there's always a Murphy's Law attached to it. Occurring simultaneously, we were going to switch our CAD system out. We'd had the same CAD system for about 13 years, and it was good for the first 3, 4, 5 years that we had it. It met our needs, and then our needs changed. The software didn't keep up with our needs, and we were going to change. Well, the PSAP was in the process of a large wholesale change out of their CAD, the records package. They were adding mobile specifically for law enforcement, and so we thought we could piggyback on their CAD, and this would allow us to be on the same platform, if you will, and with the 911 system. So this would aggregate all of our dispatch data in one spot, where we were having problems with that being dispatched out to centers, as we mentioned earlier. So there was several problems with that. One is it lacked an interface to the EPCR. There was some legacy things in it that we didn't really care for, but most of all, and this is after we had gone through a number of months of this with their sales staff and so forth, but at the end of the day, this thing was built for law enforcement. It was built for law enforcement in such a manner that instead of what we know as like a pre-scheduled call or a pre-planned call, say the non-emergency trips that you guys do, it was in a situation where you had to put it in basically as a beat cop. And if you guys aren't familiar with law enforcement, that's a situation where a guy is in a car or he's on a walking beat and he goes by and checks doors at, say, businesses. And that was kind of the mechanism that they had that they thought was a wonderful workaround for pre-scheduled calls. And as you guys can all guess, that just doesn't work for the way we work. And so we had to then go on a search for CAD, and we added basically we added CAD to the RFP quickly, and that's how we ended up moving a couple of pieces at the same time. Later on, and we can discuss it further, I believe, later in the slides section, but we added billing. We did them kind of backwards because we put the EPCR in first, then we put CAD, and then we put billing. And if I had it to do all over again, I would put CAD and billing in first and bring EPCR in, just because most of your stuff is built that way. We also had added in-vehicle mobile, which is Navigator, that most of you are familiar with if you're using Zoll products, and that was revolutionary for us. We're the first ambulance service in the state of West Virginia to use an in-vehicle mobile application. And so when we got over the learning curve of it and got guys to actually log into it and find the benefit of it, that they could message back and forth with the communication center, that they could status themselves and all of those fun things you can do with mobile, they're past the learning curve, seem to actually like it. The other thing that we added, which was pretty much for the benefit of management, was the At Work, the online product from Zoll that's at work, and we use it constantly, and I'll have some screenshots later. The other thing was, at the point that we added billing, was the insurance eligibility checks, and that was great for us, because before we were doing it pretty much the same way everybody else does it, TriZetto or Zermed, and you go to their website, you punch in the number, it tells you if the insurance is, if they're eligible, if it's valid numbers and so forth, and then we would print that and then send it over to the billing department. And so in our current situation with the billing platform, it all keeps it internally, so that sped up a bunch of processes, and it allowed us to not do trips, or at least to be able to go back and negotiate trips where we knew that there was no payer at the end of the rainbow. So when we were talking about, the absolute reconciliation of calls earlier, and this is part of the At Work product, our situation was every day you would come in and run reports from CAD and from EPCR, and then you would and those would come out in Excel files. You would then merge the two Excel files. You would then look for duplicates, and if you had a duplicate based on call number, you could take those out because they were both there. There was a dispatch record, and then there was an EPCR record, so you knew you had that one. But then you were subject to things like the guys in the field transposing digits in a call number. And then what would happen is you would end up using some functions like, the VLOOKUP function from Excel to even try to find the next, find that record because somebody had transposed digits. What you're seeing on your screen is the piece from At Work, which absolutely revolutionized the way we did that. This is from the other day, and it's kind of in the middle of the day because some of these people were on call. And what you can see from that is, and this is everybody here, when they load At Work for the first thing in the morning, this is the first screen that they see, so that they can see if there's any outstanding EPCRs from the previous operational period. And it's really easy to see. You can see the vehicle numbers, and you can also see the crew that's responsible for them. And this helps Tracy and those guys. If we had a failure in a, say, in a in-motion device in a vehicle that didn't allow them connectivity, then because you'll see, the same crew appear 2 or 3 times. But this took that whole hour-and-a-half work out of it for us every day. And at the point that we go to the ROI, I'll show you kind of what that's worth, or what it was worth to us. This is, and when we say team-specific data, we've just recently put out additional supervisory staff in the field. And what we did actually was we added about 100 years of experience in 3 guys to our supervisory staff here, and those guys are out in the field. Well, they needed to have some situational awareness, and our best and easiest way to do that was we put them on very low cost. They're actually Android tablets. There's nothing really about them. You can pick them up at AT&T, Verizon, any of those places, and we put those guys, gave those guys tablets, and they're on At Work constantly all day long. And what you're seeing there is just the At Work screen from I think that's actually what's old called Legacy or the classic view of it, and so they can see where the ambulances are, what their status are based on color, as well as where the calls are occurring, and so that helped those guys have situational awareness, because prior to that they were always having to call into a comm center to track down and try to find a truck. Mark, you got another poll for us?
Yes, I'm pulling up the next poll here, and I'm launching it right now. So for this poll, the question is, how many different applications are you using to run your dispatch, EPCR, and billing operations? So I will give you all a few moments to start filling that in. Interesting. I can see that a majority of you are kind of using 2 to 3 separate applications to run your whole operation, and it looks like about 10% of the audience is actually using as many as 4 to 5 different applications. All right, what I'm going to do is close that poll and then share the results just so you can see this. And this kind of links back to what Tracy was saying, is initially they had multiple different applications to run their application, and that was really causing attacks to servers as well as just maintenance overall. And then we have another poll which is related but separate, and this one is really specific to when you think about how many applications you have now, how many different interfaces are you using to help dispatch, EPCR, and billing actually communicate with one another? So what's running between those products to help communication? So I'm seeing the results come in. It's interesting. This is probably the most uniform set of results so far. And I am going to share that with you. It looks like about 100% of you are actually using 2 to 3 different interfaces to get all those separate products to talk to each other. So I'm sharing the results right now, and you should see on your screen about 100% of the audience is running individual 2 to 3 different interfaces to connect everything together. So I'm going to hide those results and pass it back to Larry and Tracy.
Good deal, Mark. And I would imagine that other people, if there's no one in the audience that has more than 2 or 3 interfaces, but the more interfaces you add, the problems that you have with that, are exponential, or at least in our experience with it. And I must say before I start this one that I was adamantly opposed to going to a single platform. Not only adamantly opposed, but quite vocal about not wanting to be on a single platform at the point that we were starting the EPCR and CAD searches. And I would commonly use phrases like single point of failure. If billing goes down, I can still dispatch. If EPCR goes down, I could still dispatch and bill, and using those kinds of things. And I just hate being wrong, but I was wrong about the whole thing. Tracy and I'll discuss why. But before, and this was just kind of the makeup of interface to where we are now. We were radio dispatched from the 1 and 2 centers that we discussed earlier. The entire PCR had to be completed by the crew. So the pickup location, the times, all of those things that we've become now accustomed to just dropping into the EPCR to help the crews, they needed to fill those out by hand. And it was increasing their key punch, and it also increased their error rate just because, those guys are bouncing around in a truck, and, paramedics are great. Some of them just don't type very well. The other one was EPCR was only synced with billing, so that there was no bidirectional information exchange between EPCR and CAD or any of the products, actually. The data was also, it was difficult to aggregate from the 2 dispatch sources. Again, it was the old antiquated process about using Excel and then trying to match calls out based on the location, time, and the unit that responded. And then, as we showed you in a previous slide, that's where our supervisors are using the at-work product so that they can keep up with ambulances and so forth. That was part of the reason why they were always having to call here, is because CAD was the only place that you could view the locations and work that was coming up. As far as it was pre-planned calls, or if there was a rash of 911 calls in a particular area, we would actually have to look at a different view of the PSAP CAD. So that whole thing was cumbersome. At best, it was cumbersome. So after the implementation, we have an interface between the 911 PSAP and the CAD system we have here, and I can't say enough about how smoothly that interface worked and how little trouble it is to maintain. Tracy and I've had long experiences with interfaces. I've seen a bunch of CAD to CAD interfaces through the years, and this one, when it was delivered to us, they turned it on and it just worked. There was absolutely no tweaking, no wait, we have to, engineering didn't get this right, or development didn't do something, and we'll have to get back with you in a week. It worked from the minute that it was turned on. Just can't say enough good things about how easy it was to get those interfaced. And these 2 CADs didn't necessarily, they were never designed to work together by any stretch of the imagination, and that was just really easy for us. Of course, now because we have the in-vehicle mobile, our dispatches go straight to the in-vehicle mobile and text message the crews, and they really enjoy that functionality. They have the ability to status themselves straight on through to the end of the call. The information is now available to crews to help them complete the EPCR. That's, of course, just a push from CAD on locations, times, and so forth. And we've discussed previously the no reconciliation between CAD and billing. as well as the CAD and EPCR. But when CAD and billing are in the same platform, a dispatch call will show up in billing, and they can immediately see whether the call was canceled, whether the truck actually made it on scene. All of those questions are easily answered with a couple of mouse clicks, and we've found that to be greatly satisfying to the folks over at billing, is because they didn't have to make phone calls or inquiries by email to someone in communications. And we've discussed instant insurance verification. But one of the other things was, and we have a very active, quality assurance, quality improvement section here. And so they QA'd a number of things. They're the same as everybody else. They come from key performance indicators from our medical director. And but the way they were doing it was they would have to run a report for each of those key performance indicators. And so say it was a cardiac arrest, it was chest pain, it was a stroke, it was lactic, high lactic acid in the presence of an illness. There was a number of those key performance indicators that we do. So they would basically all but have to go through by hand and find those trips. They would have to run a report, then key the number back in, to look at the run sheet, and it was time consuming. Now, because of workflow that we have, it pops into their basically their inbox. They have the ability to look at them, to make comment, and send it back to the crews. It actually ramped up QA/QI here enough that it startled the field, that they thought that there was something going on where we were targeting's a bad word, but where we were ramping up QA/QI, and I would imagine our folks here, much like most of the folks around the country, they still have a negative connotation to quality assurance or quality improvement. They don't ever really see the quality improvement part, and we've had to have several meetings with field staff. That's our operations supervisors are out there, telling them no, it was we didn't really change anything. We can just go a whole lot faster now and do a great job of it. And so anyhow, that's there we go. Trace, you want to talk about the benefits?
Sure. Some of the benefits for an all-in-one platform are firstly, single database structure. Some of the problems that we had in the past, and I think we probably discussed already, is if we had to pull data from a couple different databases to get a report that someone needed, it was time consuming, and by the time we got that information to that supervisor or manager, it could be 2 or 3 days old. So that was a definite advantage for us. We could have all that data in one database. We didn't have to look at 2 different people or 2 different databases to try to compile the information. Also, by making the change, we were able to cut the number of servers that we needed from 5 to 3 because we could virtualize them. I think on those 3 Dell servers that we have now, we're probably running around 12 or 14 virtualized servers. You can see where that definitely decreases our cost. We're not using 5 servers now, we're using 3. So the maintenance requirements that we have every year have decreased, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes, the actual cost. It also allows us to have a greater uptime. The equipment that we've used in the past, we've always had really pretty good luck with the uptime, but when we only have 3 servers to be concerned about as far as maintenance goes, that cuts the downtime down drastically, because we only have 3 that we have to worry about updating and doing upgrades to somewhere in the future. We also have, like I said before, instant data access. We can get to that data quickly because it's all in one place. It's right there really for the picking. Our supervisors use the at-work piece. All that data is there and available to them right away. There are times in the past that we've had to combine several reports to get the actual data that they need. And also, like I said, the management teams have specific data that they need. If they don't, we can create reports to give them what they need. EMS is a changing environment constantly, so the reports that we have today may not be the reports that we need next week. That's the other advantage that we have is the data's in one place. When we need to get it out, we can get it out quick, and when it changes, we can change on the fly with it. Larry?
And just one other thing that I happen to think about is when we were on multiple platforms, and we would attempt to upgrade one of the products, whether it was CAD or billing or EPCR. It happened more with billing, and it was more drastic with billing. The product that we were on, and rightfully so, when you would start the upgrade process to say a new version, it would back up the existing database, and rightfully it should, so that you always got a current backup. The problem with it was the location that backup was going to wasn't exactly steerable. So it would always end up wanting to put itself on the C drive of a machine, and as Tracy stated earlier, we were all on boxes. And so we couldn't it wasn't like in a virtual environment where we could just add resources to a machine and it being a C drive. So, and Tracy, what was the size of that database?
It was 250 gig.
So, and you can see when you have 250 gig and you're trying to get it stored on a C drive, every time we did it, we were fighting a storage issue on that machine, in particular, on that billing machine. And that has all gone away now. But anyhow, I just thought I would drop that in as one of the other things as I happen to sit here and think of it. This may be the part that you were waiting on and how we got to that number. So the cost savings is about $150,000 in the first year. And Tracy went back to look at it. This is the servers they're on a replacement plan. I would imagine most of you have a replacement plan for your IT hardware. And so it was about $10,000 a year was what our line item was attributing to that, to those replacements. You go ahead and tack on, $2,000 to $3,000 for the most part per server for the service maintenance agreements, and that's with our outside vendors. Or that was when, if we had like say a Dell extended warranty kind of plan, that's what those were running for us. We were able to continue to use the Equal Logic box. And Tracy, tell me when I go wrong. Equal Logic is basically storage, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we were able to use the existing one because we were coming up on a situation where we were going to have to buy another Equal Logic box. And those are the cheap ones, I'm told, are $22,000 a piece. And so we were able to scratch some of that hardware out, or capital expenses to scratch those out of budgets. Also, and as we discussed, the time element that was saved, which was an hour and a half a day, every day, 365 days a year. And when you start, we just added a figure of $25 an hour. And you may be sitting there going, oh, well, we don't pay that much for a job like that. And we really don't either. But when you start adding the benefits packages, the health care, retirements, and so forth to it, it's easy to get pretty close to $25 an hour, and that's about what we had, which is about $13,600 a year. And from the previous poll, and we have all but completely got away from losing a call. We was in a meeting this morning. We have 6 calls. They're not lost. We know where they're at. They're just not complete. For billing, and that's from the beginning of June, and that's unheard of for us to only have 6 of them. Not only to just have 6 of them, but to know exactly where they are and what state they're in. And so that 1% for us, based on our call volume, was about $75,000 to $100,000 a year. And the discrepancy in that was whether they were BLS calls or ALS calls. And so that's where we got the bulk of the money, was just decreasing those lost calls and being able to track those. It's one of those things that only the things that you measure actually ever improve, and that's why our at work is set so that all of our managers and directors, when they log into the at work piece, the first thing they see are the calls that are outstanding. The other thing, and we didn't actually assign a value to it because it's hard to assign a value to tracking down the bug of a broken interface and going through the 15 phone calls to vendors, to the people that did your interfaces, and so forth. It's hard to actually estimate how much that costs you, but it's it's valuable to us. That's just one thing that we come in and we don't have to fight anymore is a broken interface. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, just the time to do the updates. And again, it decreased easily by 200%, and that was because we weren't fighting space requirements and other weird things that would go on when you were trying to back up 3 different platforms. So where we are now is we have the entire dispatch suite. We have billing with eligibility. We have the entire EPCR suite. We have analytics, which is part of the at-work software, or the online. Tomorrow is a board meeting for us. I will be doing board reports, which entirely come from analytics now. There's no more running a report and moving it to something, PowerPoint and the like. I actually don't have to do a whole lot for the board report today. I can come in the morning and do it and be ready to go at 11 o'clock meeting. And that's after printing, collating, and getting them into board packets. It's it saves me a great deal of time. The other thing is road safety, and there's an asterisk that you see with road safety, and that's because Monday we will begin the implementation of road safety here. And so we're quite excited. This will be the first time we have a product like that. We were on DriveCam for some years ago, and and we had some issues with DriveCam, and they changed their program and so forth. But we will be. We're very excited to have Dave McGowan and those guys from implementation. They will be here Monday, and that's what we're going to do next week because we were bored. Basically, we thought we'd do the implementation of road safety. Let me see what the next slide is. Okay, so other unintended successes that we just didn't exactly know what was going to happen when we implemented it is we have better workload management now, because we can see the number of calls immediately that an ambulance has done in a day, and we have a number of different shifts. It's probably like most of it. We have 8-hour, 8s, 10s, 12s, 14s, and we've still got a couple of 24-hour shifts. Those are in those very rural outlying areas, and so we can better manage each of those trucks' workloads. So we don't have guys that are running a UHU of 1. Now we have the ability to roll them out into a post location that's slower and bring some of these other guys in, spread the call volume around a little bit better, makes for some happier campers out in the trucks. We've actually decreased our billing process time, and I really, at the onset of it, I didn't know that was going to be possible to decrease that. The billing department here runs very efficiently. There's only about 11 people over there. They've been here for a long time. They know what you're doing. The management's good, and we saw some changes coming around about January. We've been on the system. We've been on the billing system for 2 or 3 months. We liked the way it was going. We come into our budget cycle. We start in about March, and we were able to increase about $700,000 in receivable in the budget year that we're in now, and we're in a July budget. And from a meeting this morning, we're meeting those monthly numbers through July and August. Most importantly, here we have only hit that budget number in July twice in 7 years, and there's some factors that go into that having to do with deductibles, people on vacation, those kinds of things. But we're hitting those numbers now, and that really solidifies in my mind that we're good through the rest of the year, with the exception of some crazy governmental downturn and somebody's sequestration cut, something like that. But we're good with the numbers, and we increased our receivable budget about $700,000 a year as a result of just the efficiency and the speed at which we can process now. So also, we had greater end user satisfaction. Not only and everybody's change adverse, whether it's the field crews, whether it's your folks in comm center, the dispatch, everybody's change adverse. But if you can just keep them talked off the ledge long enough for it to kind of sink in, that's what we did, and everyone started really buying into the software, the power of the single platform, the integrations that were built in, and now they're pretty happy with the whole thing. Report automations, now we're able to just email reports at specific times. There'll be an email pop-up in just a little bit, tells me the number of pre-scheduled calls for tomorrow. There's UHU reports that come out in the morning that we look at for particular trucks and so forth. And then again, as we've mentioned earlier, the situational awareness that we have, where our supervisors, to some degree, we almost miss them because they're not in the office anymore to find something or talk to Tracy or I or the director. Those guys are out in vehicles. Because they have pretty much everything that they need, whether it's it's from the outwork piece, they've got their email and all that kind of stuff there on a tablet with them. Also, there's some meaningful data usage that we didn't think that we just didn't realize it when we changed the package. So what we have in front of you on the screen, and some of you are probably in the same circumstance, and this is what you see is a rolling history from May of 2014 through today, actually, of August of 15, and this is overdoses. And we are in a situation here locally that's just about epidemic with overdoses. You can see that early in 2014, the overdoses we were running were, kind of the standard hydrocodone. Somebody, took a bunch of aspirin in a suicide attempt, something like that. And then you can see that trend goes almost exclusively, and in the month of July 2015, it's exclusively heroin. And this is information that we were able to tease out of our data here by ourselves. Actually, we didn't have to have anybody do it. And whether it's the Bureau of Public Health that's very interested in that locally. I was told today by our PR guy that tomorrow they're doing a number of TV spots that is directly a result of our data that we can provide them. And of course, all this is, it's HIPAA cleansed and it's aggregated so that there's no issues HIPAA-wise. But we have a number of either state or local departments that are interested in that data. So what we did by going to single platform, just to summarize, is we were able to plug a bunch of holes. We increased the revenue because we're not losing calls now. We can go faster. We decreased cost of running those multiple servers. We were able to get additional life out of things like Equalogic boxes that are expensive to purchase additional ones. The downtime that we have on the software is all but nothing, absolutely all but nothing. We haven't had a software failure in months and months and months and months and months that took us offline. The last failure we had was we lost an internet connection here at one point, and we've since solved it. The business intelligence, it's pretty cool now that it doesn't take us 8 hours to develop a report to vet it and so forth. That those things are, we can draw them up on the Insight desktop and be able to look at those and see if it's actually helpful to us or not. And best of all, and this goes back to the up in $700,000 for this budget cycle. It gives us some expendable. If an ambulance has expendable cash, let's suppose that unicorn actually exists. The ambulance has expendable cash, but it allows us to invest in our people. It allowed us to give, for the lack of any better word, bonuses a month or so ago to our folks that hadn't had any increases in 3 years. Tracy, yeah, 3. And so those are the kinds of things that we were able to get by changing our software, and we do all those things the same way we'll do road safety. It's like kind of a suicide implementation. That's what we'll do. We'll start the project and just run straight with it until we're finished. But that was fortunate that we did it that way, because that got everything online in time for us to get enough money so that we could help our folks out. So with that, I think onto the question slide. Incidentally, my email address and Tracy's email address is at the bottom. If sometime after this, or if you're listening to it recorded, If you guys have a question, feel free to shoot us an email. Tracy and I are generally always around, and we'll be more than happy to attempt to answer it. And if you guys make it to the great state of West Virginia, always feel free to stop and see us. We do like the company here. Just give us a shout, and we'll tell you where the office is, and come on around. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Larry. So for those that are on the phone that have been listening, now's your chance to type your question in to the question box on the bottom right-hand corner. So while folks are typing their questions in, oh, here's one here. So, you know, as we know, budget constraints exist. How did you actually fund or finance doing all this integration within the past year?
Mark, so when we came into that budget cycle where we started switching things out, as we discussed, we were already budgeted for a number of seats of the CAD system that was operating or going to be operating. It still hadn't been deployed at that point in the PSAP. So we were budgeted there, and we were also budgeted more or less entirely for the EPCR project. We may have been $10,000 undershot it, but that was okay. We had those two budgeted. The difficulty kind of came with billing, because that was and again, we did it backwards, and I'll be the first guy to admit we did it backwards. But what we did with billing was we took the money that was in the line items for service maintenance agreements that we had with our other vendors, and we took that SMA money and applied it to the new purchase of billing, and then we financed the remaining cost over a year, and it was super affordable at that point, to where it didn't, you know, that was no budget crunch at all. And Tracy and I ran that through. Of course, our board has to make those line item adjustments as far as moving money from one line item to the next, and if any of you all on boards, you'll understand. But that took us about 30 seconds to get that board vote. That was an absolute no-brainer when we got the whole package together. Everybody, you know, our board members, our director, all those folks just intrinsically got it, and it was real easy for us.
And here's another question from Ben. When you run a wheelchair transport, does the driver fill out an EPCR as well?
Not currently, and that's because we do very few wheelchair calls that are not in a capitated rate, and it's just the setup here for us because of our existing contracts out in the non-emergency market. We're in a capitated rate, and our customers aren't pushing us for any real call detail in that wheelchair level of service. So, and because of the way it counts in the capitation and so forth in the billing system, it does it pretty much just off of the dispatch and billing information. So it's not a problem. We don't have to really concern ourselves a lot with it.
And here's a question from John. Who did the project management? Was that someone internal to your team, or was it an outside group?
Yeah, well, we bought project management from Zoll on that end, and then Tracy and I handled the projects here because, of course, you have to have Tracy in for IT, and I've missed a meeting or something and ended up doing, you know, the other side of it. And I'll say, like, about buying project management, because that always looks expensive when you're looking at it on the menu of things that you can buy. And we run pretty lean here. Administrative staff, we've all the admin staff here has all been together for 25 years or better. There's good parts and bad parts to that. It's like working with your family. There's days that it's great, and then there's days that guys know how to push your buttons because they've been around you so long. So and we'll move from one thing to another pretty fluidly here and help each other out. But we wanted project management from the vendor to keep us on track more than anything. And because we're pretty thin in administration, we knew that we couldn't find a person to do the entire thing. So basically, we outsourced it, and it was a great experience. And we really, I don't think we'll ever do any large projects again without buying the project management. Because if you've got if you've got a guy that has enough time to take on a project management situation for a long-term something that's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to deploy entirely, he's not got a whole lot to do in your shop. Is the way we looked at it.
It also worked real well for us because we didn't, we were new with Zoll, so we didn't know who to contact when we did hit a bump in the road. By having that project management person here or working for us, it's like a liaison between us and Zoll. He knew exactly who to call to get it fixed. So if we had a minor issue, which we had a few, he could make the call and get the ball rolling within minutes. Whereas if we tried to do it on our side, it would take that long to make the first call, and then we would inevitably have the wrong person and have to go through someone else to get it. So it really saved us a lot of time and effort, even after we were using the product or had begun to use the product.
Thank you, Larry and Tracy, for answering those questions from the audience. I want to thank both of them for sharing their story with everyone today.